This has been an absolutely brutal end to the season for the Boston Celtics. Losing in the playoffs is one thing, but everything about their offseason and their future was completely changed on one play. With Jayson Tatum suffering an Achilles injury that will most likely keep him out of all of next season and might prevent him from ever being the same player again. Where the Celtics go from here just got a lot more troubling. Now, despite the loss, obviously the Celtics are very good. They were title favorites before he got hurt. It was them and OKC. Those two teams most likely were going to meet in the finals, according to the odds, according to a lot of experts, and fully healthy, they still have the best roster in the entire league. However, even before the Tatum injury, it was likely that things were going to change this offseason in Boston. If they didn't win the title, there were already reports that they were going to change things up this offseason. You might be wondering, why would they do that? You just said they have the best roster in the entire league. Well, the team's really good, but they're also really expensive. They have the most expensive team in the history of the league. And one of the reasons that they've been so good over the last handful of years is that they have been spending. They have cut zero corners in building this roster. They extended Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derrick White to huge extensions. They traded for Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and immediately gave them new extensions. They even signed guys like Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, end of the rotation guys to new contracts. They didn't lose pretty much any rotation players over the last couple of seasons. And as I said, didn't cut any corners from a cost perspective, and it got them a title. But now the bill is coming due. They're in the luxury tax, the repeater tax, the second apron, everything that the NBA uses to try and prevent teams from spending at the level that the Celtics have been spending the last couple of seasons is now coming due for the Celtics, which means that if they didn't win a title this year, which they didn't, they were going to be letting some guys go simply just to try and save some money, because it's just not possible, at least in the ownership's eyes, to continue to pay this much for this roster. So the question is, who are they looking at getting rid of? Number one for me would be Kristaps Porzingis. It was a very weird season for him this year. He had this weird illness that was taking him out of games. He was terrible in the postseason. He's seemingly always hurt. And last year, they won the title basically without him in the playoffs. He came back and had a couple of big games, but for the most part, they already showed that they are capable of winning a title without him out there. They're much better with him out there, but it's not someone that you can count on. And if you're paying this much money for this team, you want players that are actually going to be out there and that you can count on. And also, he's a 2026 free agent, so he shouldn't be that difficult to move. Next up on the list would be someone like Jrue Holiday, who's 34 years old, took a step back this year, also seems to always be dealing with some kind of injury issue, and he signed for the next couple of years for over $30 million a year, so that would be a big cost savings for the Celtics. And then you get to some of the end of the rotation guys like Sam Hauser, who signed for the next couple of years, but even his modest $10+ million salary over the next couple of years really cost them a lot of money when you start thinking about the luxury tax and the repeater tax and the second apron. And they have other guys like Baylor Shireman, for example, who they drafted last year that they feel like could step into Sam Hauser's role, but be much, much cheaper. And in an ideal scenario this offseason, if the Celtics are getting rid of guys, they would like to keep, obviously, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, and Derrick White. Those are the top three guys that they would like to keep. Everybody else is potentially available in cost-cutting moves. They also have Big Al, who's a free agent, as is Luke Kornet. So if they move on from Kristaps Porzingis, they don't have any big guys if they don't also bring back either of the other two bigs that are free agents. If I had to guess, I would guess that Sam Hauser and Jrue Holiday are going to be on new teams next year, and they're actually going to keep Kristaps Porzingis. I know that seems odd because I just talked about how unreliable he is, but he only has one more year left on his deal anyway. So if your goal is to try and save money, getting rid of Holiday and Hauser, who are on multiple year contracts, and keeping Porzingis, whose contract then comes off the books in 2026, makes them much more cost efficient and more flexible moving forward into the future. And if they do that, then they'd also try and bring back Big Al as well in free agency. That saves them money, that keeps them competitive, and they could potentially get some stuff in exchange for Holiday and Hauser that would help them build the team moving forward. The hard part of that, obviously, is finding teams that would just take on the contracts. Everybody knows that Jrue Holiday's really good, but $30+ million for him over the next couple of seasons, given his age, would be difficult, I think, to find a real trade partner for. And the Celtics don't have a ton of assets or picks to attach to Holiday in order to get a team to take on his contract, nor would they want to just give away draft picks given the situation that they're in. It's a weird situation. It's odd to see a team tearing apart pieces of a team that we just saw win the title last year that most people think is the best team in the entire league. But this is something that they've been kind of preparing for when they decided to spend all this money in the first place. And it also matters that there's new owners taking over in Boston over the next couple of years that might not be as willing to spend as the old ownership group was. And ultimately, this is just how the NBA works now. It is very, very difficult to just continue to spend and spend and spend. And that's what the Celtics are facing this offseason. offseason. And the craziest part of this is, even if they just get rid of Jrue Holiday and Sam Hauser, if they bring back Big Al, if they have Kristaps Porzingis on the team next year, they're still a championship caliber team when healthy. The problem is, and the new problem that got thrown into all of this, is the Jayson Tatum injury. Because before that, the plan was clear. If you win the title this year with Tatum healthy, you run it back. It doesn't matter the cost. You can't break up a team that just won back-to-back titles. It doesn't matter what the cost of the team is. You have to give them a chance to three-peat. If they don't win the title, which they didn't, then you cut costs, but you still compete because you have Tatum, Brown, and White at the center of your team. But now, next year is just a lost season for the Boston Celtics. And even when Tatum does come back, there's questions around whether he's going to be good enough to take them to a title with a worse roster. Tatum is obviously very good, but he's never been a Jokic level carry you to a title kind of guy, and they needed a great roster to be dominant last year. And there's definitely questions around what Tatum and the Celtics look like with a worse roster if they do get rid of guys like Jrue Holiday, Sam Hauser, and potentially others this offseason. And that's why the Tatum injury is so devastating. It's not just that it takes him out for next year. It's not just that you don't know what he's going to give you into the future. It's that it completely changes what was a pretty sensible game plan for the Celtics this offseason, because now if you get rid of Jrue Holiday, if you get rid of Sam Hauser, if you potentially lose Kristaps Porzingis, the team is significantly worse and Tatum isn't playing. Like, they could win 45, 48 games next year, which is a huge drop off from the team that they've been the last couple of seasons. And if I was the Celtics and I was one of their fans, I would prepare for Jayson Tatum to not play at all next season. It makes more sense to take it slow, to make sure he's fully recovered, rather than try and push him to come back early enough for a team that probably isn't going to be good enough to win a title anyway, if he's not 100% of the Jayson Tatum that he was before the injury. Now, having said all those things, there's going to be conversations had everywhere this offseason about the Celtics getting even more dramatic than that in a couple of different ways. One, you could dump a bunch of guys and sit a bunch of players and try to tank for a season. Like, you could literally trade away Holiday, Porzingis, Derrick White if you wanted to. You could trade away everybody and basically just have Jaylen Brown shoot the ball 30 times a game, and you have your 2026 first round pick. So they could save a bunch of money, dump a bunch of guys, make sure they get under the second apron. They're not winning big next season without Jayson Tatum anyway, so maybe they get themselves into a pretty good position in the lottery. We just saw a team like Dallas jump up a ton in the lottery. Give yourself a chance at that. Pick a guy in the lottery next year, and then run it back the following season with Brown and Tatum at the center of it, your new draft pick, and Tatum potentially fully recovered from his injury. This is kind of similar to what happened with the Warriors leading to the 2020 draft when they took James Wiseman. Obviously, that didn't work out for them, and that was all dictated by the fact that it wasn't just one guy that got hurt. The entire roster for the Warriors got hurt that year, in addition to Kevin Durant leaving in the offseason. So that's not exactly a realistic path for the Celtics, but it's one that you're going to see people throw around. The other part about this that could get pretty dramatic is Jaylen Brown. We've seen conversations over the last handful of years about how Jaylen Brown might want his own team. Maybe eventually he would like to go and play elsewhere, and that the Brown and Tatum thing might not last long term. Now, that's been quieted over the last year or two, obviously, because they won the title last year and Jaylen Brown won Finals MVP, and it felt like he kind of found his place on the Celtics team. But given that Tatum is now going to be out for an entire season, do they at least see what the market is out there for someone like Jaylen Brown and maybe get some assets for the future, given the fact that no matter what you do next season, you're not going to be competing for a title because Tatum won't be on the team. Those guys, in my opinion, though, they're the pillars of the team. You don't tear that down after just one Jayson Tatum injury. You don't make the finals this year. Like, you don't tear the team down just because of that situation. But there are going to be people that are going to suggest that this offseason. At the end of the day, the Celtics are a smart organization. And right now, you can probably plan on Jayson Tatum coming back at 85 to 90% of himself. And with that, and with Jaylen Brown and with Derrick White and some of the other smart front office moves that they can make, as Brad Stevens has done over the last couple of years, you can still put together a championship contending team when Jayson Tatum comes back. It's going to be weird next year because you are just going to know for the entirety of the season that you're not good enough, that you're not going to win the title, and there's going to be some weird conversations to be had this offseason when it comes to cutting costs, but they still have plenty of opportunity to build the team back up and be really, really good when Tatum does return if they're patient. It really is crazy, though, how much one injury has completely changed everything for the Celtics. If that injury didn't happen and they lose to the Knicks, cool, we run it back, we try and figure it out, we cut some costs, and we're going to be really good. But now with that injury in place, it really does change everything. And really, the injury puts into perspective just how small windows can be sometimes, championship windows can be, because, yeah, I mean, it's realistic to expect that maybe the Celtics never do get back to true championship status. Maybe Tatum never really is the same guy anymore, and as great as the team was last year that won the title, that was their only real shot with that group. Like, yes, they made the finals a few years prior, but it wasn't the same team. When they added Jrue, when they added KP, when they put together this fantastic roster, they did it all for one season and they were able to win the title. But it just goes to show you that if that didn't happen last year, if someone got hurt and they didn't win it and then Tatum gets hurt this year, this team, this Celtics team that we feel like has been pretty dominant over the last couple years, would have actually never won a title, because things can be so frail and so fragile when it comes to injuries, when it comes to injury luck, when it comes to who actually is healthy enough to push for a title. And the Celtics now see that more clearly than ever as they go into a pretty uncertain offseason in Boston.